mauve being this kind of like fantastic color that they created, and then all the kind of fallout of that, of like, you know, poisoning people essentially. But we've not changed. Like, we've not moved on. We know the chemicals in these plastic materials that we're putting human beings in and making them wear on themselves. It's not just the dyes. It's kind of everything.
Welcome to Transcend Matter. This podcast aims to explore the fascinating interplay of materials that not only redefine aesthetics, but address pressing human and environmental challenges. Every episode is brought to you by me, Emma Wright, a material developer and researcher, to converse with material experts from either an academic, designer, or research background. We'll be diving into their practice, exploring cross-collaboration and their connection with materials. Hello listeners, how is everyone doing today? I'm very excited for you all to hear this recording with Lucy Hope. She is a beautiful human being who I was very grateful to meet back in May in 2024 with a Walmart talk with Mills Fabrica based in North London, King's Cross. I was very, very grateful to be part of the talk that day, highlighting the lack of conversation in regards to costs and sustainable materials, especially within buyers for a lot of brands. And then also really gaining internal traction within companies to have a deeper meaningful act of care for their products. I usually find there's one or two people who heads up, quote, the sustainable department, and then you're fighting against the rest of the company. So it was really good to have like my insights and to be able to share them with people and have feedback from the team and everyone who's listening. And yeah, it was a really, really great day. Anyway, super waffling now. So I'm welcoming you, Lucy Hope. She is fantastic. She heads up, it's a family-run business called Virustatic, and it is an R&D company. Her father started quite a few years ago, and she'll go into more detail. But Virustatic has a few different outlets. Their main product is called Virustatic Shield, which is a mouth covering. That's aided to kind of work with different facial types, but is also using their key product, which is their shield, and that is a protein-based antimicrobial coating. And essentially what they're trying to do is reduce the harmful polluting chemicals that are in a lot of these antimicrobial coatings in a lot of sportswear and PPE. The face mask is just one of them. But she's also exploring feminine health in menstrual products. And that company she is heading up is called Daughters of Mars, and she goes into that as well. So I really love her energy, and I love to see how a product that has been really beautifully developed within an amazing team and how she's applying it across different avenues. So super great insights for like startups, if anyone's out there. Also, especially in regards to the feminine health and hygiene, and a lot of people do not talk about this. And there is quite a few words that we do reference there. So if you are uncomfortable about talking about feminine hygiene, maybe this might not be the episode for you, but I am all for it and spreading the news and the information out there to the public. This episode has a lot of energy. When I was going back and listening to the recording, I think I had one too many coffees, definitely. And I'm trying to go slowly now and balance this out before the episode kicks in. So enjoy. Please head to the links in the description. And yeah, she is just a fantastic energy. And please do follow her on LinkedIn and all her other spaces. Thanks. I really, really like it. It's really cool. How have you been?
I've been very well, thank you. I've had a busy day today, but good. Yeah. How are you?
Yeah, nice. I've been at that Future Fabrics Expo this week, and
well, you know, when you said I'm at FFE, I actually had to Google that and think, what is that? And then I felt like I really,
so like really
which
cool,
actually was making me think. No, but it just reminds me of all these kind of, you know, it was actually in line with you know, you said you might suggest a question, which is the language we all use. Is that it's amazing how like quickly you pick up the jargon and then it becomes like so part of the lexicon of like what the industry is that I was like, oh, now I will obviously always refer to it as FFE. Like,
well, there you go. You're in the crew now.
Want to be in the club.
It just takes so long to type. So everyone basically just puts
Yeah.
FFE. So we just shorten it. So, but yeah, I can understand the confusion there. I think someone done that with another.
So what was it
expo.
like? What was it? What's it like?
Okay,
I've been to things like I've been to performance days.
Yeah.
And so is it something similar to that?
Kind of. It's more of a like educational, inspirational conversation space. So like performance days, PV, Millennium Unica, the Textile Fair at London, they're all like hard sourcing spaces. And there's sourcing libraries at FFE. So you've got these big racks of fabrics, and then you have a couple of mills being represented there. But the majority of it is like new innovation. And some of it's like ready to go, and they're just kind of like trying to get new partners or new traction. Or it's like super startup, like seedling round funding stage. And there's also just like loads of like research groups, universities there. The talk panels are amazing. They get some amazing people in from like LVMH, Kering, Canopy, Fashion for Good, and they themselves is what I find really inspiring, to hear all these big people. Like, I hope they speak a lot of truth in what they say. I think they do, but I do like it when conversations get a bit heated and people kind of like disagree with each other, because I'm like, yes, that's the real conversation, not everyone agreeing with each other.
It's what we need, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly.
That's what's needed.
Yeah,
people getting challenged on their marketing or whatever.
Exactly, yeah. And I find that really refreshing. So I usually go there, one, to see lots of clients or people I kind of know, because if one from around Europe just like floods there, so that's just perfect. One for research, and second for research, and then probably thirdly to do a bit of sourcing. So I was sourcing for a few clients there as well, just to see what new things were going on. So yeah, for full 2 days. And then like last night I was like, I just need a pizza and some ice cream, and I need to do nothing. Nothing.
Perfect.
So yeah, have you been at another conference recently, haven't you? Because you work on a couple of businesses, is that right?
Yes.
Okay.
So I have two businesses really.
Yeah.
Virustatic, which is my family business, Virustatic and Virustatic Shield,
yeah,
which was set up by my dad. So very much a family business. There's now three generations of the same family working in that business.
I did not know this. I knew from like what I knew from the Walmart conversation, Craft Week in London, which is how we met. But wow, that's amazing.
Yeah, it is special actually, and completely different kind of expertise and different roles. So it's really interesting. It's really fun. And then so that's Virustatic Shield, which is of course that all started genuinely from my dad, really, pandemic preparedness. And he, the very long story, which I actually have already told today, because I've just been speaking with the Museum of Science and Industry, or the Science and Industry Museum Trust, and they are making acquisitions of our technology for their archive. So for the COVID, they've got us already in their permanent collection for the COVID-19 archive, but this is they're having an exhibition this summer, which is specifically about innovations for COVID, which I don't know if it's not too soon, because you kind of think like, oh, people don't necessarily want to go and see a museum, like go to a museum and like look at that, because it feels so recent. But then there was things when they was explaining what else was going to be in that exhibition that I just felt like, oh my God, I completely forgot about that. And it is in such recent memory, but we've all moved on so quickly that I think it's quite surprising what we've either deliberately forgotten or have just, completely forgotten.
What weird things cropped up on that meeting? I mean, if you can't say, it's fine, but like things you're like, oh yeah, I forgot that happened. What was that?
Like the Nightingale centres. Do you remember those? Like,
my friend worked in one of those. One in Excel Centre. Yeah.
Out of nowhere, and then kind of just never were talked about ever again. Yeah.
There was a lot of wastage in that. But anyway, yes, yeah.
Yeah, a lot of wastage. So one of the other pieces that's going to be in this exhibition is a bed from the Nightingale centres, which was really surprising that I'd completely like erased that from recent memory. Of course, the Virustatic Shield is going to be in there. So yeah, it got waylaid from the story, which I happen to do quite a lot.
No,
but
don't worry. I love that. That's great. This is what I like. This is like a real conversation, so it's all good.
So the Virustatic Shield essentially was the result of, now it's, we set up the company in 2009, or my dad set up the company in 2009 with a view for better materials for pandemic preparedness that weren't based on kind of like legacy barrier filtration technology, plastics, etc. So his grandfather had died in the 1918-1919 flu pandemic. He'd been at war, done the sort of 1914-18 war, come back, and had a brand new baby boy, which my dad's dad, and died within 3 months of the flu, which obviously with millions were killed by that pandemic around the globe. And then there was the SARS outbreak in 2003. And my dad is just the kind of person that thinks of solutions to problems you don't even know you've got yet. So he was like really on this, like there's going to be a pandemic type kind of train of thought, and he said just couldn't believe that kind of the go-to protection was like the blue surgical masks, or even like the other kinds of PPE masks where they were known limitations, and even kind of the people creating them, there were known limitations. So he kind of was really committed to researching that. And it sounds odd because obviously like there wasn't a pandemic that was like, oh, there's going to be one in 2020. But my dad was kind of like committed in a way that he was like, he's heavily researched and knew it was coming, essentially, which sounds a bit like the Grim Reaper, but his whole...
Really good at predicting, because it makes sense. It's like you haven't had one for like decades, probably just over 100 years maybe. I mean, there's people out there who know these timelines better than I do, but yeah, technically it makes sense.
And so he's just absolutely totally committed to making something better than what was the existing status quo, which was breathable materials that were not solely based on petroleum-based or non-wovens, although he did a lot of testing on non-woven. It really did start from scratch. Okay, like what have we got? Where can we start? Let's test. Let's just kind of like throw out the playbook and start again. And did all sorts of testing, both with Manchester University and Imperial College London, and had kind of got himself to a certain point where he basically knew that we were going to use this particular coating that he'd developed that traps viruses onto the surface. And so he's working with Manchester University, and they kind of issued this germ trap technology press release, but it was still like several years before anyone would kind of see the importance, the relevance of it, I suppose. And then the pandemic kind of was obviously coming towards us in 2019. And that was very much like, he was still very much like a lone researcher at that point. He did do lots of projects with universities, etc. But at that point, it's like, okay, we're going to have to ramp this up. We need to get this out there to as many people as possible because, this is coming. And it still wasn't on the market commercially. So built a supply chain as a pandemic was appearing on our shores, set up a D2C website, set up all our supply chain, customers. Everything was built within 6 weeks. So it was like building the wings of a plane as it was taking off at the start of the pandemic. And then we launched in March 2020. So
6 weeks. I'm still like processing that.
6 weeks. 6 weeks. And you know what? I don't know how that happened, because now I find it like it's taking me, if ever I want to like set up a new supply chain now or to kind of try to do things with different suppliers, it's taking me like, 6 months minimum. And I don't know how we did that. Needs must, I suppose. But yeah, it was wild.
That's crazy that you could be as tight or as quick as you want your end. You can optimize your time as efficiently as you can. But the moment you have to wait for other people to like get back to you, 6 weeks. I'm very impressed from like someone who develops and sources fabrics. That's a very I understand supply chain. So crazy.
And it was crazy. It was crazy. And the fact you couldn't then go and you couldn't visit the factory and have a look, because obviously no one was allowed to go anywhere or do it or mingle or so even to go and do your QC. So and I think that's what the kind of pandemic brought out in people was like, okay, let's all kind of come together and do this. It very much was like the supply, the material and the factory they were down the road. So that they were kind of like, everyone was on board is what I'm trying to say in like getting this out there. And then when we launched in March 2020, it just went absolutely I mean, product market fit was obviously just very good.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
there's a lot of like, obviously a lot of graft, a lot of hard work that's gone into that, but almost just like timing and that traction, that timing allowed that traction to happen a little bit. So yeah, that's
Yeah.
like amazing. So it'd be really good to hear more about the Virustatic Shield and Virustatic as like a company. And I know you have to be like fingers in pies or whatever the phrase is.
Yes. So that's so Virustatic is the R&D company. Virustatic Shield is the brand we've set up for that product, and it's certainly not been smooth sailing since then. Like it's I think we were discussing it when we met at that conference, the Walmart conference. And it's kind of this classic trope of innovation being way ahead of regulation, and you kind of have to wait for things to catch up. And in this particular concept, in quite a unnerving way, in that you've got a product that can save lives and that can do certain things, and yet because the regulation is kind of like a box, essentially not really, but box ticking exercise, it's a computer says no, and that's it was very frustrating. Very frustrating at times. So yeah,
the regulations was a hot topic at the expo as well, and especially in regards to like the interior design industry, and it's slightly overlooked in sustainable systems and materials. But a lot of the FR coatings that we understand we need for some things, don't allow anything to be recycled, so they have to be incinerated or dumped or upcycled, like everything. And UK is one of the worst countries in Europe for it. I can go with the stats, but we're not talking about interior design today, so
but it's really important, isn't it? Because it's like, this is what we're all sitting on or surrounded by day in, day out, and it's so important. And so not just the case of like the recyclability or lack thereof, but like, what are these coatings doing to us as human beings in our kind of milieu? Like a lot of these fire retardancy chemicals particularly are known to be toxic to humans, and it's not like they stay there permanently on that sofa or that carpet. It's something that's a real kind of bugbear of mine. Obviously, the whole PFAS thing now is very well known about the certain chemicals that are in plastics, but they did know that a long time ago, and it's only now, years later, when they've and people just getting away with it.
It's like, how did you know about? Yeah, it's crazy. Did you know about oh god, I want to say absinthe, but it's not absinthe. It is what was in the wallpapers in Victoria Times, and it was green.
Arsenic.
Arsenic. It's like the famous like William Morris company. His dad was like one of the biggest arsenic suppliers in the UK. Obviously created that beautiful green. They knew what they were doing. And there was like loads.
Knew what they were doing.
Yeah, if you go read back from Victorian Times, it is crazy.
Think about a book I've got.
Is it called Bewitched? Something like that?
Called, no, it's called, I'm not going to say this right now. Is it mauve? How do you say that colour?
Mauve. Yeah, mauve.
Mauve.
I say mauve.
So it's a book called Mauve, and it's mauve.
Okay.
I'll go with mauve as well.
Okay.
I'm wondering if it's on the shelf behind me. But essentially, it's about the scientists that created the first petroleum-based dyes, mauve being this kind of like fantastic colour that they created, and then all the kind of fallout of that, of like, poisoning people essentially. But we've not changed. Like, we've not moved on. We know the chemicals in these plastic materials that we're putting human beings in and making them wear on themselves. It's not just the dyes. It's kind of everything. And what spurs me on, insofar as the coating we have on our Virustatic Shield is completely benign. It's completely non-toxic, and but that whole industry of antimicrobial textiles, it's poised to reach 22 billion in 2030. It's completely invisible. I don't think your average consumer knows that there's even a category of antimicrobial textiles, let alone that it's so large, and that the chemicals they use for it aren't good for us and aren't good for the environment. And they've got European Chemical Agency warnings that are very toxic to aquatic life with lasting effects. And once it's on this list of allowed chemicals, it's just used with impunity, and people are making a lot of money out of putting these chemicals on our clothes. I think
that's the key thing, isn't it? Money.
Yeah.
So, for those who are listening now who don't know too much of the technicalities of Virustatic Shield, your product, how much or would you be able to like give us some technical details, as obviously as much as you can disclose?
Yes, absolutely. So
Thank you.
the coating that we both license to other companies, but also use on our Virustatic shield, which is our first to market product. It's a snood that traps viruses onto the surface, and it's antibacterial, it's antiviral. And the coating is a milk protein essentially, but it's not just in milk. It's in your immune system, so it's in your tears, your saliva. It's essentially a very good example of the use of biomimicry. So taking something that's in the natural world that performs a particular function, and the clever science bit is applying that to a textile, so that textile can perform that function in a protective way for you. So very exciting research, but it's kind of like this kind of high-tech naturalism insofar as it's something from the natural world that science has just allowed us to kind of harness and use for good, essentially. So antimicrobial textiles, but without the use of metal-based or petroleum-based chemicals that are known to be harmful, known to be toxic. But unfortunately, the regulatory system currently still props up the use of. And that's part of my mission, really, is to kind of get the word out there and change people's minds. Well, not even change people's minds, but let people know that this is even going on in the first place, and then hopefully build up some momentum to kind of like argue for change. But that's quite challenging in the face of, as you said, big money and big industry.
Yeah, and I was going to ask you, like, how are you finding that? Because it's, yes, we can create these really interesting, innovative products that took a lot of time and effort. Like these things that you guys created took a long time to create, and you it works, if you have done LCAs, etc., and all that, all the, if we want to go to the carbon footprint of things as well, etc. But then it's I hate the word educate, but I don't really know a better word to use right now. But it's like inspiring others to adopt new ways of thinking, opposed to relying on the same systems that we've had for like tens and hundreds of years. So what sort of backlash have you had? Is it more from people who set up the legislations? Is it more people who are in your industry, outside of your industry?
So yeah, it's a really interesting point, because since we set the company in 2009, we have had, been really, really successful with good government funding, essentially. So the case for the need for this kind of technology is clear. It's very clear, insofar as there's it's being propped up by Innovate UK funding, lots of UKRI funding. But then when it actually comes to the marketplace, it's a completely different landscape. Your exciting research kind of classes for naught when you've faced with, okay, well, what are the existing frameworks? What's in the market already? And which box can we put ourselves in when you're actually an entirely new category? But I think it's that well-worn thing, isn't it? Like, we're in the UK, we are third for innovation. Like, we're really innovative. Our university is fantastic. Our research is like world class. But we're 13th for scale up, and I think a lot of that is what can that be? Is that just kind of the regulations that are hindering and getting them? I'm sure there's lots of reasons, but for me, it's like we had this as our company. Our main problem has been that it's, if you're not a big, powerful chemical company, or you're doing if you're, essentially we're a small business, where do you go? So we sort of try to have this dialogue with the regulators, and they're sort of saying, well, we don't write the regulations, we just police them. And you can have like an intelligent conversation with them and say, well, this doesn't make sense because, so for context, and I'm running away with myself again.
No, you're fine. No, you're good.
Coating on our textile, coating on our coating is antibacterial, antiviral, antimicrobial, antifungal. And there are thousands of research papers, that peer-reviewed literature, that shows this is to be the case. But those words in a industrial context are really heavily co-opted by certain companies, and you're only allowed to use those words if you are on a list. And this is simplifying it somewhat, but essentially it's called the Biocidal Products Register. And what that list and the reason that list was set up in the first place was noble and correct, in that it was supposed to be a way of categorizing and monitoring the sustainable use of chemicals that are known to be harmful and toxic to people, the planet, or animals. But once you're on that list and you've paid a lot of money to get on that list, and you've kind of proven in what context it should be used and how, that's then you have impunity to kind of go ahead and build whole businesses around these chemicals. So we find it a lot with antimicrobial textiles. They're starting putting it on polyester sportswear or t-shirts just to stop the stink, which is kind of like this Kafkaesque hell like circle in terms of, well, we're creating cheap products that do stink because they kind of make the sweat clings to them.
Exactly.
Then, don't worry, we then can put this toxic chemical on it that stops it stinking. And it's just like this whole category being created around this.
It's like putting a plaster on top of a problem. That's what it is. And when I've had been asked to source antimicrobial coatings and yarns before in the past, it's very tricky. That's what I'm going to say.
Yes, certainly. Let's go with tricky.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, no, completely agree. And so obviously, then I suppose this is when we kind of took a bit of a stand and we said, well, we don't want to be on this biocides list because it lumps us in with a load of really toxic chemicals, and that's exactly what we are not. Obviously, commercially, it would make sense for us to have done it because then we could say the words that actually communicate to a customer what we do. But ultimately, we took the position that we'd rather change the regulation, and change the regulations rather than call ourselves something that we're not. And so, we're now trying to find ways through. And, obviously we met speaking at the same conference, but speaking about it a lot. Hopefully someone somewhere will eventually, who does, if the regulators are only the police, they don't write the regulations, well, speak to the right person and finally find the right person and get the momentum behind making something change.
Exactly. And actually that's one of the inspirations for why I wanted to set up this podcast, was to almost like archive all these really interesting innovations in, like, I'm going to say, like, biotech, biotextiles, even sort of soft robotics as well, like this whole array of materials that kind of everyone kind of needs to talk to each other a little bit, to basically archive all this information and then project it out into the world, humanize your skill sets and allow the information that you have to be accessible, so then they can basically start their own personalized conversations. Because I find things that are sometimes too technical, people just don't want to listen, but actually they might still be the right person to take this information on board to share it elsewhere. So I think this conversation is really, really valid, and it's really interesting to hear like these problems that you're having. Have you found there's been any traction, like, since 2009 probably till now, in regards to opening that up, or is it just the same brick walls? And is there basically not enough, potentially, am I maybe just adding this, and not enough companies like yourselves who are in that space to drive enough traction forward? The only people I know who struggle with stuff like this are sort of like more membranes, and sort of biopolymers, but most of those work within industries that don't need tight regulations. That's why everyone stays in fashion, and that's why a lot of people don't even touch interiors, because of the regulations. And then automotive is a whole different ball game. So have you
so since 2009, no, I don't think things have changed.
Okay, interesting.
Depressingly. But what is different and what has changed now is that when we are speaking with the best in the country, like teams of academics and other kind of product developers, everyone's on the same page. So everyone knows now that I feel like everyone in the world that we're certainly operating in, and that's obviously largely like science, virology, materials engineers. I think everybody on that academic and research and development side of things, we all know something needs to change. But no, in terms of the actual movement in industry, I find that really, I just don't know how we can be so disconnected from that. How is it so disconnected? Like this, it goes to even like the point I was making earlier. We've been so well funded, and yet you then drop off a cliff at the end of that government funding. Like there should be kind of some kind of follow on. I think that then you end up speaking to some kind of body that then says, okay, so how do we then make sure your product can safely get on the market? And I don't know. It's just difficult to think that just all that money's being spent and then it stops there, and we're not then putting the money back into the public purse because we can't. Well, we did extraordinarily well in a couple of years, but nonetheless, and I think the reason, and to your question, I don't think that many companies would still be here. I do think a lot of companies just don't make it, especially small startups like we were and are, and doing something completely innovative. There's no chance. There's just not the time, and they don't have the runway and to kind of keep going when you can't sell. So
yeah, it's so true. And it's really interesting, quickly go back to your point about when you just fall off a cliff, like your research period of however many months or years you get that funding for, because you have to pitch for certain like lengths, don't you? And then there is just nothing at the end, and it's just like almost like I do wonder, because I've pitched for research grants before and pitching for another one this year, but I do wonder sometimes, are these grants just corporate responsibility tip boxes? That's not all of them. That's not all of them. I know, just putting that out there. But it's almost just like they say, hey, we're putting funding towards these cool innovations, and then cool.
Nice
work. Nice. But like,
star.
Let's commercialize that. Let's test, let's like really knock down those really hard brick walls, because what's the point?
Yeah. We just all had a lot of fun. We just had a bit of fun for a bit.
Exactly. I mean, that's great. I'm glad you've had fun. You've created an amazing thing out of your fun times.
It has not been fun, reader. It has not been fun.
But it's true. It's just like you want the accountability, because you're ready to provide that accountability, but it's almost those third party bodies don't want to receive it, or it's super, super tricky.
Yeah.
By the way, I really love your background. I'm appreciating all these books behind you. Where are you right now? You're in the library.
Thank you. This is my dining room. But so I've only just moved in, and we only have one bookcase, and so they're all here behind me in our dining room. And I do feel like it's a bit cluttered. Actually, I feel like I need to purge the dining room space of all my books. But yeah, I did, and it's all a bit. I like the texture of a backdrop on a Zoom call, but then I mean it's Thank you. I think my partner certainly isn't into having all the books in the dining room.
Just tell them it looks great.
Yeah, well, I'm gonna let them know that you said that, Emma.
I will.
He'll know.
So
it does look good as a backdrop, and actually my colleague Joe has he also has a backdrop full of books from where he works when he's at home, and I think it's like, these Virustatic lot, they really do want to make everyone know that they're well read. Like, we've both got these huge book backdrops. It's not like a company policy or anything. No,
that's fine. I mean, that's a great company policy, I think. You must read, you must have a lot of books. Force fun reading. That is fine. That's okay. So you're kind of creating a product that's going to go, well, you have created a product that is going on textiles. And most of those textiles will be for like PPE use, personal protection. For people out there who PP, another was an acronym, another shortened thing I'm putting out there. People are like, what's this? But have you at some point, because a lot of that is material engineering, a lot of that is like science, bioengineering, is that a technical term? Yeah. Have you had at some point an injection of design or design strategy that was required within your current research stage to kind of like inform the type of textiles or even the processes and manufacturing systems that it might need to be applied within? Or has it purely been engineering?
Yeah, and I always find this really curious. Yes, and it's something where we really had to find our way as we went, because we didn't originally have anyone in the company with that expertise. So we knew we had quite a simple product in that it was a snood, and then of course we knew it had to be stretchy in some way because it needed to be reusable, and we wanted it to be comfortable for long wear. And we knew it needed to be breathable because, in contrast to other PPE products, our technology is based on the fact that it is breathable, so that the air you're breathing in and out is going through the material, and therefore it can be filtered and then come into contact with the coating that then traps the viruses on it. So these were these kind of design considerations, but coming from obviously my dad being an engineer, but not a materials engineer, just having to just find our way as we went, really, and bring in other expertise from other people. The design, it's really interesting because the design has stayed really, we've been just quite committed to that design, because when we launched, and we just got so much customer feedback that people wanted our material but in a mask shape, because the mask shape just felt so much more acceptable than the snood. But we were very rigid in saying, no, we won't make one because it won't work. And only insofar as we hadn't found a design yet that would still allow the lack of all those perimeters that you have when you have a mask as opposed to a snood, which is essentially just one perimeter, actually changing the function of the product entirely. So we were really rigid insofar as we didn't have any design expertise on the. I'm sure there could be a way of designing a mask, something that looks like a mask that doesn't have the perimeter, kind of the leakage risk. Sure. But so yeah, a lot of design, and then in terms of the materials themselves, yes. So it was all really based on this Pareto front between what is that perfect nexus between something that's breathable but also filtering, so that the air you're breathing is going through the material rather than ingress and egress out the sides. And that's the problem with kind of in legacy and in existing technology, is that when you put that material over, how it's tested is you put that material over an aperture and you blow aerosols through it. This, in the existing testing, it's like a salt aerosol, and then they kind of see what gets through and what doesn't. But that's not anything real world. If you're putting a piece of material over an aperture like that, and nothing gets through, that isn't then, that's obviously an excellently filtering material, but you're not taking into account that it's going to be worn on a human with a face,
and then moisture build up,
shapes, and then moisture build up, and all these things are not, I don't think, are considered in the existing designs of material of masks. Yeah, but these were very much the basis behind the design of ours.
So is your coating is in combination with basically a product design? Are you guys looking at selling the coating separately as well, or
that? Yeah. So originally it was just the mask, the shield. It's called the Virustatic shield. But since then, looking and learning about this antimicrobial chemical industry and knowing that we can be a really effective replacement to what's being used, we meet all the ISO standards for antibacterial textiles and antiviral textiles. And whilst we're not, we've done all the research to show that we've got all that capability, that's where I'd really like to push forward next, is to really look to do that B2B, be a kind of benign, natural, antimicrobial, really gentle textile coating for the purposes where it is important, to have some degree of antimicrobial function, but not at the expense of your health.
Yeah, absolutely. There's some huge mills out there who would adopt that or would be open for discussions on that. I'm sure you really got conversations going with those people, but they would be...
No, this is very much something now that we've finished the research, and this is kind of like, so Emma, introduce me.
We can talk after this. That is fine. Because there's a whole world of special companies who specialize in coatings, and obviously the information on that varies, as we've mentioned before. But
we're excited about its potential.
I am. That's why you're here. And also you bring an amazing energy, and I love people who have fantastic energies. I love it. Okay, so what I was really interested is what direction do you see sort of protein-based science moving into, sort of other fields of application? Is there anything out there right now you think is of interest?
Yes, for sure. Well, on a very sort of personal note, is that I've just set up a new company that's spun out of our original company, so Virustatic, and it's called the Daughters of Mars. I'm actually even wearing the Daughters of Mars. I'm wearing one of our t-shirts, and this is a feminine health brand. So it's still textiles, because we're we're surrounded by textiles. But yeah, we've developed a tampon with our technology that prevents bacterial vaginosis, and
wow,
that's kind of what I'm spending what I'm spending my days and nights and weekends on at the moment is finalizing that product development and hopefully bring that to market early 2024. So it's essentially early 2025. So the technology essentially rebalances your microbiome, your vaginal microbiome, your intimate microbiome, and it's a really important innovation insofar as 1 in 3 women suffer from bacterial vaginosis every single year globally. Those that get it will get it again within 6 to 12 months. And it's another of these like largely hidden, unspoken about problems. So what's really nice is that, the application of this textile science can be so varied, and it feels like it's varied, but of course it's not. It's still kind of coated cotton or coated cellulosic, but completely different, with a completely different intended purpose.
This is really exciting. I've also saw this pinged up on LinkedIn, which is why I was like, tell me about your multiple businesses. Because I was just like, oh, this is very interesting. I love when people do multiple things. I think that's great. So how long has this body of work been going on for?
So we've been developing it not full throttle, but for 3 years. We have had a couple of grants, so an Innovate UK grant and a National Biofilms Innovation Centre grant to develop the technology. And then at the end, sort of beginning of 2023, I just decided that this had to be now, and I wanted to focus on this because I just sort of thought it was so important. And so really, I've been going at it full throttle for about a year, and it's really challenging. It's hygiene. They call it feminine hygiene, but of course, there's nothing unhygienic about being a woman or having.
It's better. Like, who can come up with these? We need a wordsmith to come up with these better phrases. It's just like, so annoying.
Yeah. And yet, tampons are such a monopoly in terms of there's only a couple of companies in the whole world that make these products, and only recently have some challenger brands come out and said, hold on a minute, we're not using organic cotton, we're using plastics essentially. So a lot of the products will have a kind of polypropylene or non-woven top layer that's plastic, that's known to have chemicals in it, and it's therefore no surprise that there's so many gynecological problems when there's products we're using don't have to adhere to any kind of like really stringent, no pesticides, no chemicals. It's absolutely blown my mind the more I've learned about it, just how much people will carry on getting away with stuff for as long as they can until someone says, oh, I didn't realize. And I didn't realize the products I've been using my whole life were plastic. You don't think so, because
why would you? Like, if your parents or like whoever like said use these products, why would you question that? Like, you're not going to really talk to your mates so much. I don't know.
Exactly. Well, this is as you say, it's part of the problem. It's part of the education that needs to happen, is that you think someone out there is looking after you and like making sure that the stuff on the market is like safe and not kind of laden with chemicals that might cause you issues. But unfortunately, what I'm realizing is that there isn't. And there's more, and certainly in feminine health or feminine hygiene or period care, there's more regulation about a bandage or a plaster that goes on your arm than something that obviously goes internally. It's not a medical device. It's not regulated as a medical device. And that's that's a shame. There are some amazing challenger brands who are coming out now and saying, no, we're going to produce the medical device standard. We're only going to use organic cotton. But even like some of them, won't name any brands, but there's the big legacy brands have now come out and said, oh, this is our 100% organic cotton tampon, and it's plastered all over the box. And then you look on the back and it's like, well, it's not actually. That's just the core. They still have the non-woven top layer that is not, I don't think it's polyester, but polypropylene on a polyester string. And so it's just.
And it's also more expensive. So the greenwashing marketing has allowed them to put a premium price on it. So then obviously you immediately what's the word? I've got my brain's gone to mush today. You immediately, a band of people might not want to spend that much money, which is completely fair enough on a tampon. So then it's insane.
What are they left with?
Exactly. And then like, okay, yeah, you can say, okay, that person might find out it's full of this, polypro. Was it what was the coating? Sorry.
And the non-woven top layer tends to be oftentimes is made of polypropylene. I might need to check that. It's some sort of polypropylene or polyester, but yeah.
Wonderful, thank you.
Yeah.
So some sort of chemical
Petroleum-based plastic.
Yeah, but that shouldn't really go inside your body, because that's what's happening. These things are going inside your body, and people don't really think, oh, it's just whatever. But no, like it's going inside you, and like even if they knew about it, they're going to say, well, I can't afford to buy anything else, so what's it going to be? So it's really frustrating. And again, that sustainable products, or even if they are greenwash, it's putting sustainability within a very high price bracket, which is infuriating, because it's pricing people out, which is disgusting.
And it actually goes to, I mean, I would love to be wrong on this, but it actually goes to the point where, I don't think that most people know that polyester is plastic. I genuinely, outside of our world where we talk about these things, I am absolutely convinced that I say to my friends, oh, it's polyester. Oh, well, what does that mean? Well, it means it's plastic. I genuinely don't think that, and I think that's a deliberate thing, obviously, in terms of like labeling, etc.
Yes. So when I done my master's at Royal College, my dissertation was very loose. Well, it wasn't loosely. I interviewed like 80 plus people in the end, just genuinely like very haptic, very qualitative. What's your opinion? What are your thoughts? What are your like intrinsic values on wearing plastics, wearing polyesters? Sorry, I said polyesters to them, polyesters, and just general recycling. And there's a whole array of questions. And I want to see if people genuinely cared about their sustainable practices. Like, do they have like real actions of care? Do they do something within their everyday life to make it sustainable? Whether it's just not having dairy, reducing your meat, etc., etc., or are they just caring because their friends tell them to care? So they're working in these communities of like, oh yeah, I recycle, it's fine. Even though we all know recycling doesn't have a huge amount of impact, depending on how we want to look in and measure all this stuff. Anyway, but that's another conversation before someone like hits me down on that.
I'm very interested to hear about that, actually. But anyway,
no, we can jump into that one. That's fine. Yes, no, I'm all down for this as well. But basically, what a lot of my friends, some people realized was that they recycled a lot, which again, I'm telling people to recycle, don't stop recycling. But what they realized, they still bought virgin clothes, so clothes that went secondhand and were made of polyester.
Yeah.
And they didn't realize the amount of plastic bottles that actually accumulated in their t-shirts, in their knitwear.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, what are you doing with that afterwards? And they were just like, I'll just chuck it away, I'll just do that. And I'm like, you were just literally mitigating all that recycling you've just done, because of the amount of bottles and the cardigans and what have you was made out of polyester. I think my main thing is I see recycling as a stepping stone, because you're still feeding into that petroleum feedstock that creates those plastic bottles. So there's thousands of plastic, millions, billions of plastic bottles in the world. We still need to upcycle it and maintain that material value in a different stream of some sort. Absolutely down for that. But I'm really keen to look at alternative feedstocks to petroleum, so then we don't have to exhaust all the energy on the recycling, etc., etc. So yeah. But interesting on the polyester chat. Oh la la.
But certainly in terms of the feminine hygiene stuff, like I almost like I've become this like evangelist now that goes around talking to people about their vaginal microbiome, and I am sure that everyone's just like, cringe, why is this woman subjecting me to this? But I'm just like, you need to know this, like you need to know that you have this vaginal microbiome, and it's 9% of your, okay, so as human beings we are 50% microbiome, so only 50% of us is actual like cells, and the rest of us is bacteria or microbiome. And for a woman, her vaginal microbiome is 9% of the total bodily microbiome. And of course, things such as tampon products or pads that are made from these plastics that are known disruptors. It's just become a point of extreme passion for me that I want to let people know just how important it is, and also that you've got to be careful. No one's out there looking after you. There's no fairy making sure that your fairy is okay, but like the products you're using are not actually causing you harm. And it's not just about having an unbalanced microbiome. All the research now showing that, like Dr. Tim Spector and his work on the gut and like all that connection, now people really are kind of really learning about the connection between gut health and brain health. Same with the vaginal microbiome. Like, it's really now quite clearly connected in all the science to increased risk of infertility and miscarriage, increased risk of ovarian, all sorts of cancers, but ovarian cancer, increased risk of catching STIs and HIV. Like, it's so important, and it's so affected by the things we're sitting in and on. And textiles is just so important in that, because it's everywhere.
Yeah, I still think
everywhere.
textiles are still put in the craft category. People don't value textile engineers, designers, craft makers, whatever bracket you want to put them in, as being like a equal skill set to someone like a scientist. Really interesting.
Agree.
What's the type of response you get when you talk about bacterial vaginosis, especially to people you might not know directly? Are people very open? Because I find in the UK we can be quite prude. I'm very happy to say that. I'm like, God, guys.
I'll be honest, actually.
And I have no filter. I have to try and filter sometimes on this podcast. I'm like, Emma, remember to filter some things, because I'm usually like, huh?
Well, I'll be honest with you, actually. Surprisingly, people are desperate to talk about it. And I think people have been, why do we not talk about it? And I think people are just like, yeah, well, actually, it's funny you say that, because, and obviously if it is 1 in 3, then I'm going to have a good hit rate of like actually falling upon someone that's been quietly, desperately suffering for a very, very long time, thinks it's just them, doesn't understand why. And so, no, I get a really good reaction. And I think increasingly, women are aware we've got so much internalized shame about not talking about things, and then kind of starting to question, well, why should I be embarrassed about this? Why should this be something that's, an off topic, or a kind of like only unhushed whispers topic? It's not shameful. It's it's your body. It's like it's not shameful. So, but that's what's challenging, I guess, in terms of the marketing side of things, again, in that a lot of the brands that are really doing good and trying to educate, like words like vagina, are banned on Meta, or you'd be shadow banned on Meta for using that word, because obviously it's categorized as sexual health, or not sexual health, but sexual content.
So I did not. Whoa! I didn't.
Yeah.
Whoa! I did not know this. You'd be banned on Meta for using the word vagina. Okay, we can use the word vagina. You can say it a million times on here. I do not care.
Vagina.
So
you'd have
really?
Vagina. Yeah. So there's such a thing as so Amazon as well. You will you will be banned from using the word vagina on Amazon. All the big global advertising platforms are, I would say, misogynistic, but they would argue that it's all very difficult because they have to get their policies right to protect other vulnerable people. But what this means is women who are searching for solutions to their own health issues are not able to find products that are people that are educating them, and products that are for them. So there's such a thing now as algo speak. You have to like write things in a certain way, or put, when you put like asterisks. So vagina, you'd have to like put a little star in it. Or a couple of brands do funny things like use a particular emoji, like a cat emoji, instead of having to say the word. But how infantilizing that we can't just say the word vagina. So you will get shadow banned. You will have your ads blocked. And it is a bit of a female issue, an issue for women, because men's products in a sort of similar category, let's say like, I don't know, erectile dysfunction, they are not scrutinized and targeted in the same way. There's a campaign about it at the moment, about like all these ads that were banned, which were about body positivity and kind of self-awareness and anatomical awareness, were banned, versus these kind of quite graphic ads to do with erectile dysfunction that were all allowed. And it's just, there's not parity there, really.
Oh, could you send me that, please? I wasn't we're really
yes, I will. I have to remember the name of it, and I'll definitely send it over to you.
Wow, this is a really interesting conversation. I've kind of liked where this is like navigated to.
It's like words like, there's so many words that are banned. And actually, do you know what? There was a great Body Form actually did a really good campaign about it, because even big brands like them have to get around these rules somehow. So they did a big we're not going to remember all the words now, but it's silly stuff like boobs, or the words like just words that obviously women talking to each other would use to describe. I don't think it was boobs. I will send you the list, but
Yeah, but
yeah, it's not.
essentially you are explaining a body part that's attached to you, and you're not sexualizing it. You are just
Yeah,
literally talking about it technically because you need some technical information to help you out, and you aren't allowed to do that. And in the age of like information, the misinformation is probably outweighing everything that's like
oh, of
useful.
course. Yeah, yeah,
It's insane.
yeah,
Um,
exactly.
so online, I feel like you talked about this a little bit more in regards to like regulations. But is there anything else you feel like is missing or needs more of to like sort of allow innovation or sort of more um, commercial traction or orientation with the materials to market? And that can be like in both of those companies or just in general, really.
It's interesting. So, particularly in Virustatic Shield, I feel like we really struggled to find people to help us. There are so many component parts into making a garment, and we really didn't, you know where to start a lot of the time. And I do wonder what the solution to that would be for like me. And it is, meeting people like you, and I'm thinking there's a whole world of people out there doing these fantastic things, but for um someone that is kind of in a particular science segment who wants to create something, it's it's to your point about that interdisciplinarity and how do we all get connected. I know a lot of it comes through time and networking, etc., but that's what I found really, really hard. I had such, in my mind, I'm like, this should be simple, and yet it, pulling together all these moving parts, and it's not simple. It's very much not simple.
Yeah, product design, especially in textile accessories, apparel. Oh, it's crazy. I worked with people who
Yeah,
started like years and years and years ago when I just focused purely on apparel and fashion because now a bit more sort of bespoke material development. But when people used to come to me, they started a brand new brand, they've never worked in fashion, they've worked in, I don't know, they were a lawyer, they were an advertiser or something. And I was like, oh, it's gonna be fine. It's
oh
gonna be
dear.
fine. And I'm kind of
Well, exactly that.
yeah,
I think you're right. Like, I think people have no idea. I mean, obviously we weren't just like trying to create a fashion brand. We were wanting to create a product for like saving, but it doesn't matter insofar as it's still the same people who are going to make these things for you, or pull together all the expertise to make these things. And it's very, it's very difficult. It's just very difficult. Where do you start? That's
yeah, it is a minefield. And actually I really want to create at some point in my life, it's all these things I want to do and create because I love connecting people, I love helping people, and just bringing people together. And what when I create like a collective of like minds and skills and everyone's just like interconnected and working on these projects, because I think like the real, I want to say cool is not the right word, but they are cool. But the real like sort of innovative or sort of human and planet, even though like we've had this discussion actually in series one, like planet centered is essentially sort of human centered as well to some extent. Anyway, projects are sorry, no, human centered is more planet centered because of the environment we're in. Sorry, rewind. I do need like multiple fields to come together to create this traction. I think actually, yeah, this is a space that we all know we want and we need. And there's some like random studios dotted around the world that exist and do that, but they're still really arts based. So yeah, they don't really kind of get galleries or studios, and you're just like, what's missing here? Like, what is that gumption? Like, yeah, that we need.
Yeah. I I I don't have the answer, but what I do know is we've been part of a couple of it's like the Woolmark thing, Woolmark bringing together all these amazing people. They're doing all sorts of things, but we got the business of fashion, textiles, and technology. We were very lucky to apply for a grant, and we got it, and that's so interdisciplinary. It's several universities all coming together with dyeing skills and materials science skills, and it very much pulling together all these different people that kind of can come together and be in fashion and textiles.
Yeah.
But that's, I suppose maybe it is don't know. They don't know what the answer is, because the university is obviously fantastic at bringing together the research, but then, okay, I need to make a product now. And where do I find the people that can help me make this product? And that's what commercial ops. And I found that really challenging, especially when we were trying to, so obviously we had the product we went to market with, which wasn't the most sustainable version of what we could have done. We used a viscose, and obviously we were really committed that we wanted to constantly iterate on that and make it more and more sustainable as best as it could possibly be, to match the science behind it. So we wanted every element of it to kind of be and for every part of it to be at the kind of cutting edge of what's possible in so all the different disciplines that come together. Let's get the best of all those disciplines and make sure the product is the best of those disciplines. But that was like coming from, and now that's not true, obviously, because my network's really grown over the last few years. But that was originally like Google, like trying to find people through Google, and excellent practitioners like yourself, wouldn't necessarily come to the top of top of my Google search, for example. So it's, how do you find these people?
I guess like LinkedIn's very, very useful, but yeah, no, you're completely right. Yeah, it's super, super, super tricky. And then like the reverse, like when I'm after like a particular like polymer engineers for something, I'm like,
polymer engineer,
where are you? Like, be my friend. Slightly crazy, but it's fine.
Like maybe that would be a good idea, someone to create like connections. I mean, I'm sure that maybe already exists, but like,
yeah, I guess LinkedIn to some extent.
Yeah, but then you can like have your categories of like what people are expertise in.
Yeah,
and, like, just I need an X in X.
Yeah, ideas. Yeah. I like it. Nice. Actually, what we haven't told our listeners, I've realized, is like your background. So I don't know if you want to give some insights a little bit, just to like inspire people who are in maybe similar backgrounds or, studied similar topics as you. And they're thinking, okay, what do I want to do next? Where can I grow into? Maybe I want a hairpin in my journey. I always just really love knowing how people got to where they are, because I always find it super inspiring, even just like personally. So yeah.
Well, I have got a very non-traditional route,
Fab.
into this world, insofar as my background is very much the arts, and I did languages and literature at university, and then was a musician for 11 years. And
wow.
So a complete hairpin, as you call it, into this. But essentially, because my dad's company had been working on this since 2009, I guess there was still an element of it where he's so mono-focused that it was the topic of every dinner we ever had, every meal we ever had was always talking about where's the science, how's the business going, very much family business, but I wasn't working in it. And then I then got a job doing in the arts faculty of a university, doing technology transfer, essentially. So knowledge exchange and knowledge transfer. So that kind of got me then into this kind of industry academy interface partnership building, which I just loved so much, and did it doing it from the inside of universities going outwards. And then as the pandemic hit, my dad was like, I need you need to just come and work for me, because I really need your help. And so I've been there since, really, and doing it from the other side, really. So I am, grant writer. My dad is like one of those kind of people who is super, super monofocused genius, but I always say he's not fit for public consumption. And I always say that, and then actually that's not true, because people really, really like him. I'm just being
he's
really
not media trained. That's the technical term, not media trained. That's what they call it. Yeah.
Yeah. So I have just like designed a role for myself, which is to be his representative on planet Earth, and try and just get what he's working on out there, because he's not a natural person that would like. Are we still talking about? Are you still there?
Yeah.
So that's really where I've come in and kind of pushed because I'm passionate about sustainability and always have been, and so I've pushed a very strong line on that in the company, and that's really been my driver, really. So applying for certain grants, which are all based around sustainability and bringing in sustainable expertise, did really, really well on getting a few grants where we got sustainable chemists, so green chemists.
Nice.
Joe, so you met Joe at
Yes.
the conference.
Yeah.
So Joe works with us. So essentially, we got a grant where Joe came to work with us for 18 months, funded through that grant, and then he has stayed with us because we really like Joe. The project came to an end. We wanted Joe to carry on working with us. So my background, then, I suppose the expertise I have, which is helpful, is being able to write grant proposals and communicate, and being a non-technical person. It is going back to what you said, something really early in our conversation, is like communicating something in a lay way, being able to understand something that's really, really complex, and then therefore being able to talk about it in a lay way. That means that it doesn't matter what discipline you're from, you're kind of all talking the same language, you're speaking the same language. So yes, so it's very, I like the fact that we need to bring the arts and design into STEM, but that is my very non-traditional route into STEM. But I'm really passionate about. Yeah, and I honestly want to really shout more about that. And obviously there's a lot of focus on studying STEM subjects, but I'm now so utterly passionate about this world I'm working in and all the amazing people I get to meet. And I don't think people who've kind of got an arts bent or arts background could ever think that this could be a kind of career for them. But it is so human, and it is just people. A lot of it is people. And so it kind of is a bit of my MO, really, is to kind of encourage more arts background or design background people into STEM.
I love that. Yeah,
STEM being the way in.
Yeah, because you've got that emotional connection and like not tangibility technically, but like you understand people and how to communicate. I think having a languages background is so helpful. That's amazing, especially with grant writing. People like, that's their actual job, is just to like check people's grant papers and research it. It's crazy.
Well, and this is what really frustrated me, and I do think it maybe Innovate's changed now, but I remember my dad, writing these it wasn't called Innovate UK back then, but essentially writing these grants, and the feedback he got as someone who's, dyslexic, but very, very highly specialized and highly intelligent, was his spelling and grammar wasn't very good. And this feedback from Innovate UK, and you're thinking, it's like you can't preclude people for that. Like, that's just very exclusive.
It happened to me.
It has happened, and that's just absolutely. It made me so angry, and I'm so appalled that somebody can be out there, like, literally at that point selling his own home to research something so important for the sake of like changing the game, and you get someone just to say, oh, well, you spelt this wrong. So that's kind of where I came in and felt really passionately like, no, I'm not going to let that happen really anymore. Like, I will write your grants for you then, because you can do all the science, you explain it to me, and then I will make sure it's communicated in a way that you don't get. And that, Emma, I'm disgusted that that's happened to you. That's really upsetting that that's still going on.
I won't say what paper it was for and whatever, but like some of the feedback was just like, oh, one of the things was spelled incorrectly, and there's a few little comments, and obviously now people use like chat GPT. GPT. And I do, that's like an amazing tool for me, because it relieves the stress of like writing some things, so I can put all the bullet points, I can extract information, like that's what I like, and it just kind of sticks it together. That's engaging for people, opposed to sound like a freaking robot. So that's usually my problem. I'm like, I like this, and this happens. I'm like, my brother's always like, stop using all these. I'm like, I'm sorry, I forget every time. It just like falls off my brain. But yeah, no, I remember that being a thing, and I was just like, did you just miss about all the information about like looking at sustainable materials for like
stuff I'm doing,
or like for like alternative tech materials, capacitive touch sensors that were like compostable? Anyway, that's a whole different kettle of fish. But yes.
but just very upsetting that's. I mean, look, I know the bar for this needs to be high, obviously, in terms of that, disseminating government funding. But that's it's a bit demoralizing, isn't it? That's amazing researchers and amazing people are missing out because someone's being quite judgmental about their spelling.
Yeah, I know. And no, do I get it? No, I don't think I do. I was going to try and like understand the other side, but I think sometimes that is slightly archaic in how things are still measured. Not for everything. So I know there's some amazing people who do the validating, or they do the interviews for UKI, and they're great people, and their pots of fun, their pots of bits of bobs are amazing. But I know some systems are still very much like, I don't know, they haven't really cottoned on to STEM or STEAM.
But
I guess if you pop the arts in there.
it's real. I don't think it has changed much. So like someone for example, people who are those out there doing things differently, that really are not, we idolize these people like the Steve Jobs people of the world, or all these people doing things in a completely different way. These become our cultural heroes. And yet actually those people are, and just insofar as those that kind of neurodiverse people who do think differently are not, you do have to trammel themselves into a certain way of explaining yourself, or a certain way of kind of structuring your thoughts. And that, in a way, like, it's language being so powerful is actually quite thought limiting, and like actually your ability to create new thoughts, if that has to be limited by your ability to get that on a piece of paper, with limiting potential in a really important, like, tangible way.
Yeah, completely. I completely agree. I know we've been talking for a little while, but I actually have just like one more curious question. When you were learning, when you went for that transition during COVID, when your dad was like, "Come and help me, I need your skill set." How
Yeah.
did you find? I feel like you probably, because you studied literature, this probably helped you quite a lot actually in general with understanding and articulating things. But how did you? What type of communications do you have to understand the science, like the hard science? And then take that more into like your world, because I know people who actually set up design systems and thinkings to almost like be a Rosetta Stone between science and design. Was there a lot of that back and forth going on, or was it just like reading it and then saying, okay, I understand this, I don't understand this, and your dad kind of explained it? Or
Yeah, there's a fair bit of insofar as it's quite we have a technology rather than me having to understand the whole of chemistry, I suppose.
yeah,
I have been able to fully understand our technology and how our technology works, and I've been taught that internally. But I suppose being able to read scientific papers even without that background, I've certainly brought myself up to a certain level of really feeling very confident in knowing how and why it works. But what we've always relied on is we've always worked with exceptional practitioners in their respective fields. So taking Joe, for example, an amazing chemist, taking our partners at Liverpool School of Tropical Medicine, and world leading virologists. So as long as I've just got the language enough to be able to say we're doing X, Y, and Z, and it works, like, I've always found that it's nice that there's a common enough language that then those are the experts. You don't need to always be talking about the very, very complex ways things work to kind of keep moving forward, if you know what I mean. I don't know if that answers your question.
Yeah,
but insofar as I did originally would feel very exposed on calls, or I'd always have to like preface everything. I'm non-technical. I'm not a scientist. And I really had this apologetic thing at the beginning of every conversation we ever had with people. And yet I feel less need to do that now than I
practice
maybe
almost
4 years ago.
Yeah, interesting.
Yeah.
And it's interesting to see how like you have like evolved, your personality has evolved probably through that. And we should never be apologetic for anything, but we do that. I do that.
Yes.
Like you almost just like, I'm sorry for saying sorry. I'm sorry again. Stop saying sorry.
I say sorry a lot, but I'm definitely want to say it a lot less. But no, it's true. And also, having the reassurance of either the scientists that we work with and them saying, you don't have to keep saying you're non-technical. You actually know a lot about this. Like, don't always think that you can't have, in 4 years, have learned a lot about something or other, even if you haven't got that kind of academic background. Again, it's about not, like, as you say, like, have you had that sort of legacy? What am I trying to say? Like, if you haven't all just been kind of, what's the word I'm looking for? I've said trammel before, but if you've just not always been taught to think in a certain way because you were a certain type of person or scientist, or I don't know. I'm trying to say that it feels like I can be quite flexible in terms of who I am able to have the conversations with, and I just think people ultimately are people and like to chat to other people, and it doesn't necessarily have to be this kind of competition about who knows more about something. I'm just desperate on every conversation I'm ever involved in, just to learn from them. I'm fascinated by you, Emma, and all that you get to do, and I'm just thinking, I want to know, honestly want to know, I want to like ask every question back to you. Has anyone done that yet?
Oh my god, that's so funny, because I've literally had one of my friends who I interviewed, Hannah Elizabeth Jones. She's like an amazing doing a PhD on like bio research and materials, and very holistic approach to her work. And she said to me, Emma, I think we should do a podcast and we interview you. And I'm like, oh, okay.
She's right.
We should do like a bonus one. I was like, okay. She says, you keep dropping these things in. I'm like, do I? I don't know.
You should definitely turn the tables.
That's fine. I'm down for that. That's okay. We will organise that. That's okay. I will get that in the pipeline. So I think quite like a nice way. Would you would like people to reach out to you? I'm assuming that you would. I should never assume these things. But you have such a brilliant personality and energy. I assume that you would want people to reach out to you.
Definitely, yes. So there are two ways, and I suppose it depends on whether you're more interested in the kind of Virustatic shield side of things, and that is Lucy Hope at virustatic.com, or the feminine health and my new period care startup, the Daughters of Mars. That's Lucy at thedaughtersofmars.com. And that's actually quite a funny, like that kind of relates back to the whole family business thing. So Mars being the god of war, the Daughters of Mars were these Amazon women, so from like Thrace, Macedonia area, always who were at the limits of the then known world, like always trying to push things forward. Fierce warrior women who just wouldn't accept the status quo.
Yeah, I was about to ask you about this, because like, hold it, is it this? And you literally just answered what was in my head.
Totally is. And that's the story. So then, they were always at the limits of the then known world geographically, and I just kind of wanted to embody that kind of fierce warrior spirit, like not accepting the status quo, not just accepting received wisdom, not just doing things because that's the way it's been done before, and kind of pushing the limits of the known world in a kind of science and product way. But the daughters of Mars being kind of like also this kind of like personal nod to my dad, like him being Mars, like this kind of guy that's like always like out to change the world, like quite like in a kind of like really like non-standard, belligerent way, like refusing to kind of do things the way it's been done before. So that kind of me being the daughter of this kind of like angry citizen scientist that's always trying to change things. So that's where the Daughters of Mars came from.
That's amazing. That is a great name and a great story. I really appreciate that. Thank you so much. I don't know if there's any takeaways you'd love your audience to have. For me, it's like just being brave and just like challenging and communicating, and anything to add?
I think it's that. It's we know that better can be done, so let's just not accept it not being done better. Like let's all just say no, sorry, we're not accepting that anymore. Let's all come together and just refuse to accept the status quo when it doesn't serve us. I think is let's incite rebellion.
Yeah. Amazing. Oh, I loved it. I was gonna wrap it. That's so good.